This is Marketplace. Is this label lying to you?
I didn't know that.
That's the question. We've got the answers.
Shut the front door.
Juicy secrets from behind the counter.
You would take the brown meat and turn it red?
Yeah.
The food may look good, but the facts will gross you out.
The fecal indicator.
A fecal indicator.
That's terrifying.
They're being told from the top down to fudge the best before date.
And take a ride in the Marketplace time machine.
The fondue mix she'd bought was over 3 years old.
This is your Marketplace.
Are you ready to play the food dating game? Play along. We're about to share 5 secrets you need to know about best before dates. Those little labels you see on food packages. First question, what's a best before date?
It's the date you're supposed to throw out your food.
I think it usually refers to the last date they're able to legally sell it on the shelves.
Best before date would be probably something about what you shouldn't eat afterwards.
On the streets of Toronto, Ash is hearing a lot of guessing. So I'm going to get the food facts on those dates. From microbiologist Keith Warner. I actually found this pack of crackers in the back of my cupboard, and it has a best before date of April of 2014, so well over a year ago. Would these still be safe to eat?
So let's have a look at them. You'll probably break a 2 for 2 on those, but they're perfectly safe.
So I get to do the taste test. All right, here we go. Oh, this smells,
And tastes.
tastes terrible. That is definitely past its best before date. It might be perfectly safe, it is not tasty.
Exactly, and that's why people put these best before dates on.
He says for most foods, best before dates will tell you if it's still fresh.
The best before is just a general measure to say, well, after this date, we can't guarantee the quality of the product.
What types of food should we stay away from once they're past their best before date?
Big ones are deli meats and soft cheeses and meat, raw meat. Because what they can do is have a potential to grow pathogens, which we can't see, we can't smell, and the food becomes dangerous. But other products are fairly safe. Things like bread, for example. Yes, it'll taste a bit more stale, but it won't be too dangerous. Other things like pasta, dry products like cookies.
Best before dates can be important, so how much can you trust them? One grocery insider had lots to say. She agrees to tell all if we protect her identity. This former bakery clerk tampered with food for years. What would happen to foods in the bakery that had passed their best before date?
If it wasn't selling, we would cut the cake in half, like this, and then each half would be packaged on its own, and each of the halves would have a new best before date put on it.
How long could those sit out for?
They actually had stickers on them for about 2 more weeks.
And then what would happen?
After a couple of weeks, if it still hadn't sold, we would actually replace that sticker with the new one. So that's 2 additional weeks on top of the 2 weeks, on top of the weeks that it's been in the display case.
She worked at a Your Independent grocery store in Ontario before it was bought by Loblaws. She says tampering with bakery items at her store, common practice.
With the fruit tarts in the display case, we would take them and we would scrape off the fruit as it got older or less desirable looking or moldy.
Moldy, so you'd scrape off that?
Yes, and then we would just retop it with new fruit and we would reglaze it and then we would put it back in the display case until this fruit wasn't looking very good anymore.
The boss said that was okay.
The boss didn't just say it was okay, this is what we were instructed to do.
And it wasn't just fruit tarts. Our insider says she scraped off fruit and retopped some cakes, too. Sounds gross, but could it be dangerous? We buy some cakes and fruit tarts for lab testing. I brought you some food products to take a look at. But to our surprise, when we open the box, let's check out this cake. It's a fruit tort.
Wow, look at that.
Holy cow, this has not passed its best before date and there's already mold on it.
It's furry already. This isn't good, is it?
Wow, can't believe how much mold is on here.
Yes.
Has this cake been doctored? The store said it's not past the best before date. We ask Warner to help us simulate what our insider tells us about what happens to cakes and tarts 2 weeks past their best before dates. On day 1 of our test, that moldy cake, surprisingly, still safe to eat. But nearly 2 weeks later...
So these are yeast and molds, and you might see these orange ones here. They look pretty, don't they?
Yeah. If you ingest that toxin, what can happen?
Well, nothing will happen to you instantly, but what over time, it can lead to things like cancer. So this is why we have these best before buy dates, really, to stop these sort of things happening.
Yikes. And he says the longer these toxins stay on foods past their best before dates, more potential growth and risk. And there's more?
This comes in the form of what we call an enterobacteriase, which is a fecal indicator.
A fecal indicator on the tort.
On the tort, there's a lot of handling when you produce these torts. They can introduce a certain degree of coliforms and other bacteria.
You found a lot lurking on the surface of that tort.
It was like a sea of microbes underneath the fruit. It really was. And the number of bacteria amazed me as a microbiologist that even these microbes could grow so high in a cake.
Pretty disturbing. Almost 2 weeks past their best before date, the fruit tarts are loaded with toxins too.
This is aspergillus. It's a mold that produces a mycotoxin, which can be fairly fatal over a long period of time.
Our insider says she didn't know there could be potential risks, but why'd she do it?
When you're working there, it's part of your job and you're told to do it, and you're not really at a place in your life where you can take a stand or say anything about it.
So, what's her advice for you?
I would personally avoid buying any cake or pie or bakery product that isn't in its original form. If it's been cut in half or cut into smaller pieces, there's probably a reason for it.
Back on the street, what do you think? One tip from these former workers is you should buy foods in the bakery in its original form.
Noted.
It's an advice that I should start sharing with a lot of my family members and friends.
That's a good piece of information. Yeah, it's definitely something I could use in the future.
Loblaws won't come on camera, but after learning about our findings, they tell us they've reinforced their bakery policies with all their stores. We wonder if what we're hearing is unique to the bakery department, so we design a national online call-out. Hey, Alicia.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, I'm just checking out some of our results.
We hear from grocery workers who've worked at retailers, big and small, from coast to coast, in the deli, bakery, produce, and meat departments.
I have witnessed seafood that was expired be turned into chowder mix. Ugh, that's disgusting.
Yep, across the country, they share disturbing secrets of what goes on behind the counter.
Oh, look at that one. We would take unpackaged pies, cakes, cookies, and repackage them as a single serving dessert. That's not good.
No. Take a look at this one.
Meat was rewrapped. Best before date was changed. Person after person is writing in about changing the best before dates.
Yeah, it's shocking.
So as we were researching this story, it turns out one of our very own interns on Marketplace used to work at a grocery store. So I'm going to meet him and hear what he has to say.
Zahir used to work in the industry.
What did you do with meat that was past its best before date?
He gears up to give us a demo.
Something like this, they would take, they dip it in blood, just dabble it a little bit.
And we've simulated some blood here.
Yeah. So just dabble it like that. And then as you can see, it looks a lot redder.
That's what you would do? You would take the brown meat and turn it red?
Yeah, so we would turn it red. And then if like, again, we do it as many times as possible, we just keep flipping it.
When it comes to our third question, what's happening in the meat department, we hear doing a meat makeover is easy.
We would rewrap them and put down a new sticker, which came with a new best before date that extended the shelf life.
And you won't look at ground beef the same when you hear this.
If it's really bad, if it's like this, we would dabble in a little bit of blood, throw it into the meat mincer with some redder meats, and then all together it would make it look red. And then we'd put it back up on the shelf.
And people would buy this?
Yeah, all the time.
Sounds misleading, but can it be risky too? Food safety expert Keith Warner helps us recreate what we've heard is going on with meat. We mix meat that's 4 days past its best before date with new.
How's it smell?
I'll let you do the honors.
Not too good, not too good.
Turn it on. So how's this new blend look?
Looks totally fresh, so it's well disguised.
Yeah, that looks good.
But could it be bad for you? We send it off for testing.
The good, the bad, and the rotten, we go to the core. And a best before flashback.
It didn't look right, and it didn't taste right.
Did our coffee cups investigation get your pot boiling? Find out what Tim Hortons and Starbucks staff have to say. This is your marketplace. Ready, set, it's a time bomb. Flashback 1976, funky fondue.
A few weeks ago, Mrs. Rita Clifford of Sudbury, Ontario, served a cheese fondue to her husband and their guests. The fondue was, quite frankly, awful. It didn't look right, and it didn't taste right.
Mrs. Clifford complained to the manufacturer, and she got her money back, another satisfied consumer. End of story.
Not quite, Joan. Mrs. Clifford also received some interesting information. The fondue mix she'd bought was over 3 years old. The Langes Company has not been making fondue mix for almost 4 years, and the ideal shelf life of the mix would have been under a year.
So next we called the Toronto office of the T.J. Lipton Company, as they handle the marketing of Lange's products. And Lipton's branch manager knew all about Mrs. Clifford's failed fondue party, but he didn't feel it could happen again. And in fact, he jokingly remarked, "I'll bet you $1,000 you couldn't find another package of the stuff." Well, we went to 4 stores in Toronto, and 3 out of 4 had the mix, 2 Loblaws and the Dominion. And we figure that branch manager owes us about $3,000.
Great.
That was then. This is now. And we're finding some grocery stores are still playing games when it comes to best before dates.
Would you eat this past the best before date?
No.
No. That's gross. It's fruit.
What we're about to show you next might just change the way you shop.
Food safety expert Keith Warner is helping us test some foods insiders tell us are being doctored to extend their shelf life, like grinding up meat that's 4 days past its best before date with fresh. Yuck.
I'm curious how it tested.
So what we found was the meat was absolutely loaded with bacteria after only 1 day. It was loaded with these type of bacteria called Enterobacteriaceae. And what they do is that these can break down the meat proteins to make something called biogenic amines, which are toxic chemicals, which can cause asthma, mood changes, all sorts.
People who bought that meat wouldn't know that it was spoiled because it'd been mixed up with the good-looking meat.
Exactly, it was deception at its worst, isn't it? Totally unethical. And in this case, I think it goes beyond ethics, doesn't it? It goes to safety and things like that.
Zahir has experience working in the grocery biz. Like others we hear from, he says mixing old meat with new happened all the time.
Who told you to do this?
So the butcher and my supervisor, or a lot of times he'd bring it in for me. He'd bring in like a stack of like meats that were brown, slam them on the table and be like, Zahir, unwrap these and relabel them and stack them back up on the shelves.
So what advice does he wish he could have given his customers?
Don't buy from the front of the shelves. Reach on behind, grab this stuff in the back. That stuff is usually a little newer.
Back on the street, we tell people about all that meat tampering.
That's disgusting.
Oh my God. That's terrifying.
Do you buy marinated meats?
I'll buy like marinated fish.
Do you consider it fresh?
Yes. I always think it's more fresh. So I feel like they prepared it in the store that day.
See, I put my trust in companies that might not be fresh. It's not fresh.
So, can you trust marinated meat? We hear from other insiders, including this Ontario grocery manager. He says there's a secret reason some stores are adding sauces and spices to meats.
We've got some marinated drumsticks here. Why is stuff marinated?
Things get marinated if it's going off or it is off. They will marinate it to hide the odor. and if there are any dark spots or whatever, to mask that and then put it out for sale. And things that are marinated actually sell for more.
You charge more for stuff that has gone past its best before date.
Yes, it was referred to as value added. So because you're adding something to it, it increases the price. So in our store, things like steaks, strip loin steaks, they were going off, they were expired essentially, would be coated in some sort of barbecue marinade or cracked pepper, something with a really strong odor to hide the rotten smell.
What was the reason given for doing this?
It's all about profit and money, and the health of the consumer is not really a concern, it's how much money I can make.
With almost 10 years experience in the biz, this insider's got a tip for the next time you're out shopping for meat.
I would not buy pre-marinated meat or pre-spiced meat in grocery stores because you don't know what has happened to it. It could be fresh, but it could also be expired product.
What tends to happen, according to some insiders, the marinated meat, it's often marinated to kind of disguise the color, hide the odor.
Disgusting. It's a fraud. Oh no.
I always just thought it would be the most fresh, but you're wrong. Yeah, it was really wrong.
You should be honest with your consumers. You want action, we want answers.
Canadians want to be able to trust when they go to the grocery store that they're buying food that is safe for them.
Get our newsletter, your cheat sheet to the news you need. To eat or not to eat, you don't want to miss this.
Who's ready to play the food dating game? We're getting the goods on best before dates. Insiders from coast to coast tell us they're tampering with your food. Store policies are being ignored. Final question. When you see mold on food, can you cut it off and eat the rest?
I think so. Hell no.
As far as I know, you can cut it off and still eat it.
Microbiologist Keith Warner says it's not as simple as you might think.
If you see mold growing on a product, is that safe to eat?
In things like bread, it's safe, but if you think of a soft cheese, if you think of jam, if you think of even a strawberry, and you see these molds growing, they could potentially be producing these toxins that diffuse through.
But this former grocery manager says old fruits and veggies sometimes get a second life.
Anytime you needed to make a fruit tray, you might go out onto the counter and see what's out there. Maybe something is starting to turn, and you would bring it back in and cut off the part that is bad, and then cut up the rest that looks good, and then put it into a fruit tray.
Did you actually see that happening?
Yes, I did. Same thing happens with some vegetables, so it happens quite often.
Okay, what if I told you that hard food products like orange, cauliflower, or broccoli, if there's mold on it, it's okay to eat, but when we're talking about soft foods, don't even take a chance.
No, I didn't know that. Before I have actually cut mold off strawberries and eaten it, so I didn't realize that, no.
Shut the front door.
Misleading people about best before dates is illegal. There are industry standards for best before dates. Stores are supposed to self-police, so there's no way of knowing how widespread these practices are.
Not every grocery worker who answered our call-out had stories to share, but 1/3 of people who'd worked in the industry in the past 10 years said tampering was going on.
No surprise to retired public health inspector Jim Chan.
What kinds of stories have you heard about altering best before dates?
I've been receiving complaints from the public regarding, when I buy a product home, it looks like somebody changed or covered the best before date, or people would say that looks like somebody changed it by using a pen, or they just smudge it.
All of those things, people were questioning whether they'd been tampered with?
That's correct.
He's been hearing about food tampering for over 30 years.
How do you know those things are actually happening?
Very often that we will do a spot check, go to the meat counter or the food packaging counter right away, and just to do the best to see whether those evidence can be collected.
Yep, it's often hard to catch in the act. So, who is minding the store? We try for weeks to get an interview with the industry group, the Retail Council of Canada. But they won't talk on camera. So, with test results in hand, We pay them a visit.
Hi there. I'm Erica Johnson from CBC Marketplace, hoping to see David Wilkes.
David Wilkes is the Senior Vice President of the Retail Council's Grocery Division. We wait and wait. Finally, he comes out to speak with us.
Hi there.
What specifically are you going to do now that we've told you people are tampering with best before dates? There's a risk here that people could get sick.
Right. I don't accept that the products that were changed or altered or there was issues around that there was safety concerns.
The employees are telling us that they're being told from the top down to fudge the best before dates. It's coming from managers often.
Right, and so I don't accept that premise.
Canadians want to be able to trust when they go to the grocery store that they're buying food that is safe for them.
They can trust the quality of the food that is in Canadian stores. They can trust the food safety.
If we've discovered that people are being told to fudge best before dates, what steps have you taken to mediate that?
The steps were already in place. The steps were in place.
They weren't being followed.
We ask Wilkes if he'll pass on a message to his members.
Will you make a commitment to us today? Will you commit to getting back to your member stores and telling them they have to enforce the policies that are already in place? Because obviously that's not happening.
I don't need to do that because those policies are already in place.
But
they
no
are
one is
enforced on a
following
date.
them.
I
Well,
challenge
but they're
that
not being
for some.
followed in.
Thank you very much.
We agree to disagree.
That was interesting. He heard our concerns and he said that basically these policies are being followed in stores. It's not what we found.
So, what message do you have for retailers?
As a mother, as a wife, we are putting our trust in you, so please help us.
You should be honest with your consumers.
I would say any company tampering with best before dates, don't do it. It's not worth my help.
Is your favorite fish oil or protein powder really any good for you?
Dietary supplements, a capsule of prevention, or a dose of hype.
They're out there saying, take this, you'll be a complete man, a complete woman.
More than half of this protein is spiked.
They're basically cheating the customers.
Fish oil or snake oil?
None of the 7 products that we tested met their label claim.